Welcome to John Redmann, Power of Attorney, the show that aims to empower you through knowledge of the law. I'm Attorney John Redmann.
And hello everyone, I'm Shauna Sanford. Welcome to the show. Well, today we're continuing our conversation about buying and selling a business with one of the leading authorities in the industry and award-winning author Michelle Seiler-Tucker, and someone who knows the legal ins and outs of the industry, attorney Damon Kirin.
On the first episode of this topic, we learned the basics about buying and selling a business. We've returned to dig a little deeper.
That's right, and that's exactly what we're going to do. But before we get to the heart of our discussion today, we touched on due diligence the last time. We're going to dig a little deeper into that. But tell me, how important do you think due diligence is, based on some of the cases that you've handled?
Sure. Well, due diligence, in a sort of overlapping topic, I see it because in my field, sometimes I'm suing insurance companies when they haven't done their due diligence. They haven't treated or acted in good faith. Where businesses are involved in my field, sometimes I have to sue where a business hasn't done its due diligence. It hasn't properly reported maybe debts and liens owing on it, and they can get in trouble for that, and I can get money back for clients who sue and they say, they didn't tell me about this debt, they didn't tell me about this thing. And so it's one of the things we'll get into today.
Absolutely. Well, stay tuned. Coming up next, we'll be joined by our guest. We'll be right back after this quick break.
We can beat this. The spill in the Gulf, it's a catastrophe.
But we will solve it.
This is not a Gulf Coast issue.
This is a national problem that requires a national solution.
But what can you do to help?
What do you have to offer? Your voice.
Speak up.
Add your name to the petition
Demanding restoration and protection
Of America's Gulf Coast.
Sign it.
Share it.
Be the one.
Be the one. RestoreTheGulf.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Well, deciding to own your own business is both very exciting and also very risky, but it is part of the American dream for many people. It can take some time to see the rewards, but if that's what you want, then you have to be smart about it. Our guests today are two of the best when it comes to buying and selling businesses. Welcome the amazingly successful entrepreneur Michelle Seiler-Tucker and attorney Damon Kirin. It is great to have you all back on the show.
Thank you.
For part two, we had such a great time with part one, and there's so much more that we need to get into. But let's go to your book. Your book is called Sell Your Business for More Than It Is Worth. Thank you, John, for holding that up. Doing a great job. It's an award-winning book. And tell us about it. Can you sell your business for more than it's worth?
You know, I absolutely can. On average, I obtain a 20 to 40% higher selling price from my clients. And the main reason for that, Sean, is we really do a thorough job on evaluating that business. Most business owners run personal expenses through their business. So on their tax returns, they might show a net income of $100,000. But by the time we add back health insurance, depreciation, amortization, cars, travel, meals, entertainment, etc., they might be making $1.2 million. So we really find out what that business true seller's discretionary earnings really are, and selling that business based upon that value, what's not just on the tax returns. Because if you take a business at face value on the tax returns, the business might sell for very little. It's not worth much.
So, and those things that you just listed, add backs is what you call them?
I call them add backs, and these are personal expenses that business owners run through the business, such as cars, travel, meals, entertainment, salary, obviously depreciation, amortization, and interest.
All right, so it's basically it's good salesmanship, but it's legitimate. In other words,
absolutely.
Some people, whether you have a broker or not, they think it's got a certain value or worth, and they'll sell it for what they think it's worth. What you're suggesting, if I'm understanding your message, is, you know what, if you dig a little deeper and you in the range that any of those things might be worth, you advocate legitimately for the higher value in all those different categories, and you add it all up, you can argue that it's got, in fact, a higher worth.
Absolutely.
So you're not saying we're going to sell your property for a value that's not legitimate, you're going to get more than other people say it's worth, but in fact, you're actually selling it for what it's worth, just the higher end of what it's worth, and it's legitimate, and that's how basically you earn your fees that you charge.
Because we do all the legwork. We uncover, we peel back all the layers of the onion to figure out what that true seller's discretion earnings really are.
So when you talk about doing the homework, let's talk about on the front end, Damon. How often do people do their homework when it comes to getting involved with buying and selling businesses?
Well, when any business broker will oftentimes list pertinent information, and one thing we kind of touched upon in the first segment is you can never do too much homework when you're buying a business and jumping into an area that maybe you haven't been in before. So it's really important. Michelle and all of our listings provides pertinent, relevant information to allow you to make an informed decision about the business you might be buying, but it's important you do everything in addition to that in terms of internet research, just even some legwork, walking around, seeing who your competitors are to make sure that purchasing a specific business is right for you.
Yeah, well, I guess with so much that's available to people, there really isn't any reason not to do as much homework and find out as much as possible about any business that you're going to go into. But do you find that that often is the case, that people really are not doing their homework?
I do, and we really try to do a lot of the due diligence for them in the beginning and making sure that we include all that information in the offering memorandum, and we tell our buyers, educate our buyers on what they should look for, what type of market research they should do, and we provide all the financial information from the tax returns, balance sheets, profit and loss statements, bank statements, etc. So we make sure that they're well equipped so they are, like Damon says, making a decision based on education and informed decision.
And, yeah, go ahead.
Well, if when someone comes to you either to buy or sell a business, when someone hires you and your company's services to let's say sell their business, you're trying to maximize the value of the company legitimately. If someone comes to you to help them purchase a business, you're not I didn't ask the question very well, but basically you wouldn't have the same person buying and the same person selling as your clients, correct? Or would you?
Well, we do represent a transaction, so we're working with the buyer and the seller on that one particular business.
Okay.
But we're making sure that both interests are protected. We do have a fiduciary duty to both sides.
Okay.
And again, when we look at the business, I'll give you a quick story if you like, if that kind of helps sum it up.
We like stories, yeah, that helps people understand.
Damon and I worked on a business, we won't say who it is obviously, but it was a truck store, and the owner wanted $1.2 million for his business. On his tax returns, he was losing about $65,000 a year. On 1 year, I think he had a profit of $8,500 a year. So based on his tax returns, there is no way his business was worth $1.2 million. He had maybe $300,000 worth of inventory. So best case scenario, we can get him paid for inventory and assets, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, but that's about it. So after going through all his books and records, which took me literally 6 months to go through everything, he wasn't losing $65,000 a year. Johnny wasn't making $8,500. He was making $400,000 a year. So I did sell his business for $1.2 million. So that's a perfect example.
A great story.
The buyer's not paying more than what the business is worth. The buyer's paying the actual value. All we did was do the legwork to find out what the true seller's discretion earnings really were. You know, business owners have been working in their business for so long that they forget what they run through their business. So when I ask a business owner, what are you making? Most of them look at me like a deer in headlights. They can't tell me. They're like, oh gosh, because they're running cars, travel, meals, entertainment through their business, and they really don't know at the end of the day what they're making because they have been doing it for so long.
So you're able to sort it all out and demonstrate using applied accounting principles and legal principles when you have an attorney who's able to
we use
demonstrate
industry
that.
standards, we use business comps, and of course we don't do anything without legal counsel.
Yeah, Damon, you're going to jump in.
Well, one related point I think I make is one of the real values I see in using a business broker is that the existence of the listing, the fact that the business is for sale, is made confidential. That means any prospective buyers, that means all your competitors that would probably like to know whether or not your business is for sale, maybe learn stuff about your business. All those entities or anyone that wants to look at the business has to sign something legally binding saying they will not share any information they learn about the business with other people. And that's critically important. You want that protection if you're prospectively selling your business as an owner. You also don't want your employees to find out your business is for sale, because oftentimes employees maybe get scared, leave, think their job may be in jeopardy, even though oftentimes it isn't. So it's critically important that if you do choose to sell your business, that you make the process confidential. It benefits your interests.
So it's a confidentiality agreement that the buyer has to sign. Is that it's a legal document that the buyer has to sign?
Correct.
It's a potential buyer.
We utilize a 3-page legal document, confidentiality agreement, that they cannot disclose the information to anyone other than their lender, CPA, attorney, and or spouse. But that's it.
So let's talk a little bit more about the buyers out there, because there are people who are going to be watching this and they're going to say, you know what, I would love to buy a business, but how do you qualify a buyer? What sort of qualifications does a buyer have to meet?
That's a great question, Shauna. It's kind of like qualifying for a house. When you go and you look at a house, what does a real estate agent do? Most of the time they'll pre-qualify you to see what house to show you, because if you can afford a $200,000 home, they're not going to show you a $5 million home.
Right.
Same thing with a business. We pre-qualify all of our buyers to see what type of business that they qualify for. So let's say a buyer has $20,000 to invest. We're not going to show them a $5 million business. We'll show them a $40,000 to $60,000 business where they can put $20,000 down and sell or finance the balance.
Okay, and so let's help people out there too to have realistic expectations. This is something that we talked about.
Yes.
And this phrase that it takes money to make money, that's very real. Talk a little bit more about that.
That's very true. We have a lot of callers that a lot of buyers that call us up and they want to purchase a business, but they might have $10 and live in an apartment, and unfortunately they don't have the wherewithal in order to purchase a business. So you really have to, in order to make money, you have to spend money. So you have to be able to invest something. So what we look at is how much cash you have, if you have any retirement, if you have any equity in your home, if you have anything else, wealthy family members, whatever the case may be. We need to make sure you have that financial capability to see if you do qualify to purchase a business, and then which business category you qualify for.
Yeah, and Damon, I know you can't say enough about having realistic expectations, right?
Absolutely. I mean, oftentimes people think that buying a business is the American dream, and it is.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone dreams about owning a business, being your own boss, and the rewards are there. All the rewards of the American dream, and Michelle and I have seen in representing and helping people, everything is there, but don't be unrealistic about the fact that you're going to have to work hard, and you might have some low moments, but if you work through those low moments, there'll be plenty of high moments.
And let's just also mention that, on the other hand, if you own a business or you have a controlling interest in a business, you've already got the asset to sell, you qualified. You can call up and say, hey, I have a business, I want to sell it. You don't, even if your business is losing money, you can talk about selling it, right?
Yes, yes. There's obviously a lot of things that we go through with that particular seller to make sure that business is sellable. Not all businesses are sellable, but we obviously sit down with them. We look at everything, as I mentioned in my book, from customer base to employees in place and financials that the business is making or losing money. We can sell businesses that are losing money. It's not obviously easy, but we've done it.
Yeah, and I guess you've had some situations where you have done the legwork and you come to the conclusion, you know what, you're just not in a position to sell right now.
Or the seller is not in the right mindset. They want $10 million for their business, and their business is worth $1 million.
Yeah.
Well, how do you deal with that? Because I would imagine if people have put their heart and soul into building something, and it's their dream and their vision, and they've made it come true, and sure, it is worth a lot to them, but perhaps more to them than what the market will bear.
And that's our most difficult position. And when I go in to deliver my evaluation and tell a parent what their child is worth, it is very difficult.
Essentially what you're doing.
And it is the hardest part of my job, because it is.
Yeah.
They're selling their baby. They're selling their life's work, their most prized possession. And I'm like, oh, and I have to tell them, but guess what? I always find out what they want in the beginning, and everybody has a number. Even when they tell me that they don't have a number, they always have a number. So I get their number first. Then their number doesn't influence my number at all. I do my evaluation, but guess what? I make sure I have all the tools to support my evaluation. I make sure we have the industry standards to show them and educate them. We have to educate them why their business is not worth $10 million. So we show them the industry standards. We show them the business comps. We pull businesses businesses all over the world that are in a similar industry with a similar gross and similar cash flow that they have. And then what do? We back into it and we tell them why that $10 million price tag will never meet the buyer's sanity check. It will never cash flow enough to cover the debt service and earn them enough to live on.
Well, we have more questions. Our viewers have more questions, and I like that buyer sanity check. I like that. So just stay tuned. We're going to take a break. Coming up next, we're going to take your questions. We will be right back.
My life is full of statistics. Thing is, I could have dropped out of school and become one myself, but I didn't because I had people that believed in me. Here's another statistic. 7,000 students drop out every school day. That's one every 26 seconds. It's time that students know that we believe in them.
Inspire a student and share your message of support at boostup.org.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. It is time to get our viewer questions in on the conversation, and we have lots of great ones, so we're going to go straight to them. Our first question comes from Mark. We were talking about this earlier. I think you mentioned having family members help out when it comes to buying a business, but Mark's question is, can someone donate a business to me, say in a will? Have you ever seen that sort of situation?
You know, I personally have not, and I think that's a question for Damon or our fabulous attorney to answer.
No, you absolutely can. Some of the interesting things, and something I'd point out as a preliminary matter, is oftentimes business owners never prepare for what happens in the event they pass away. And that's critically important. You have a succession plan, or that you even identify, first, of course, have a will, but if you do have a will, you specifically explain who inherits the assets of the company, who's going to operate the company, and most importantly, that you have an operating plan, or however your business is organized as a company. Something envisions the possibility that the owner of the company might no longer be with us. But to get to that specific question, you absolutely can donate a business in a will. There may be estate tax consequences, and there may be other issues in terms of, even if the business has essentially been given, a lot of things need to be done through the judicial process to actually have the son become the president of the company. So it's not so easy as just saying, I want to give my son my business. It's a complicated process.
Or daughter.
I'm sorry. Son or daughter.
Let's make that
clear.
We're actually going to have a show on estate planning in the coming weeks, actually a two-parter, and a fascinating discussion. But yeah, because somebody's got to sign checks, somebody's got to keep the assembly line rolling or keep the cakes cooking in the oven, and so yeah. But we'll talk more about that in
Sure,
show.
and just real briefly, you just can't go to a bank with that will and say, give me the reins of the company. It's a very detailed, laborious process. But you absolutely can at least express your intent in your will that you wish your daughter or your son to take over the reins of your business.
Okay, let's talk about some of the top 10 mistakes that sellers make. Let's get into those, because there are lots of mistakes. The top 10, though, include telling people that you are selling, which we talked about. That confidentiality clause is very, very important.
So don't do it.
That is crucial. The number one reason that all sellers hire business, not all, but most sellers hire business brokers is confidentiality.
Yeah,
it really is.
Sellers wait too long to decide to sell.
Yeah, you
they
touched
do.
on that in the last episode.
Not hiring a broker to sell for you. Very important to hire a broker. I mean, we've heard so many things that perhaps we wouldn't even think about considering that, but this is your business, so you know all the ins and outs.
And hire the right broker. Like anything, you've got good and bad. So make sure that you do your due diligence and hire the right broker to handle the sale of your
running your business may be your expertise, but selling your business is not something you normally do in your business. That's why brokers are good at their job.
Correct. There's a lot of moving parts in selling a business.
And then you make the distinction between using a business broker versus using a real estate broker.
Right.
Correct. Do not hire a real estate broker to sell your business. It's like saying you need heart surgery and you're going to go to a dentist. I mean, it just doesn't work, and real estate agents don't understand confidentiality and all the moving parts associated with selling businesses.
Number 5.
Yeah, not securing long-term lease. That's also a big one.
That's a big one, because if your business is not well branded and your business is based on locational loyalty and you don't own the building, if you don't have a long-term lease, and let's say you're on a month-to-month, the buyer can go behind your back and negotiate directly with the landlord and not pay you anything for your business. So you have to be very careful, and you want to make sure that you have a lease, it's a long-term lease, and your lease has been recorded.
All right, not pricing the business properly, and I guess that leads to number 7, which is giving away the farm, which I guess you could easily do if you haven't priced it properly.
Well, when we say give away the farm, a lot of sellers who are working with buyers, they don't have them sign a non-disclosure agreement, they don't qualify them, they don't obtain their financials, and they have no idea if this person has a financial capability to purchase their business, but yet they give away all their financial information. I've seen them give away their customer list, they give away their trade secrets to a person who can never afford to buy their business in the first place. So if you're going to try to sell your own business, you really need to know the ins and outs of qualifying and disclosing buyers.
Just a quick example, the guy who has on his tax record something that makes it seem like the company's worth $200,000, but in fact it's worth $1.2 million.
Correct.
If they didn't have somebody like you to figure it out, maybe would have sold it for $2 million.
They will be giving away the farm in that case.
Okay, number 8.
We got into that about not qualifying the buyer, very important to do.
Correct.
Also, what about focusing only on one buyer?
Yes, and that's another big problem that sellers make, and a lot of sellers will come to us to do the valuation and see what the business is worth because they have this one buyer. And guess what? 9 times out of 10, that buyer never comes to fruition. So we don't just have one buyer. I have bought my sellers many offers. My last seller, I bought them 3 offers. So you want to make sure you never put your eggs all in one basket.
Maybe that buyer is looking at other possibilities too, and maybe the buyer at the last second buys something else.
Correct.
And leaves the seller standing at the altar, as they say.
Gosh, wow. And last, trying to sell employees, big mistake.
That is a big mistake because 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work. Sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't. And if you are going to sell to your employees, you need a business broker because that employee needs to be properly disclosed. You need to be able to make sure that that employee can afford to purchase the business. And guess what? Now you're disclosing all your personal information, all your financials, everything to this one employee. And if the deal doesn't work out, the employee now knows all your information, all your confidential information. Now the employee can become disgruntled. He can tell other employees, and now you have a mess on your hands.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's get to Ed, who has a question about owner financing, which we have talked about some. He says, in owner financing, what happens if the buyer backs out at the last minute? Damon.
And I'll try to answer this in 2 different ways. If the buyer at the very last minute chooses to not go ahead and buy the business, they potentially could lose their deposit under the terms of the purchase agreement. So that provides the seller some protection that they maybe have been going through this process of potentially selling the business and then their expectations are not met, the sale is not consummated, then the seller could retain the deposit. If under a slightly different scenario, because I'm not exactly sure what the question is getting at, you actually purchase the business and you start operating the business and the purchaser says, you know what, this really isn't for me, I don't want to do this, and they stop making the payments under the owner finance agreement. There are procedures in place that allow the seller to repossess the operations of the business expeditiously and make sure that the business continues to run, because the last thing you want to do if you own a business that you just sold to someone else is have them run the business into the ground. So those contingencies, as best as legally possible, are anticipated to protect the seller's interest in this process.
So it can happen, but there'll be some penalties.
And that's part of the value, again, of having an attorney involved who knows how to prepare the right legal documents that protect the rights of both sides, really, but to make sure that if you agree to pay, you're going to pay. And if you have obligations to not run the business into the ground, to make your payments as the purchaser, and as the seller, you have certain obligations as well. So everybody's protected and everybody's got to behave, and if either side misbehaves, there are penalties that apply. And that's why it's good to have an attorney involved to write the right legal documents that can be enforced. Correct?
Absolutely, but most of these terms and these agreements are pretty uniform, which is why I serve as an attorney to the transaction. Just like your mortgage for your home, those terms are pretty standard. It's very similar in what we do, but my job is really to make sure everyone understands what they're getting into, everyone understands their rights and obligations. But generally, and it might be because Michelle does such a good job, we very rarely see businesses go in default. Generally, knock on wood, purchasers are generally happy and find a way to continue to allow the business to grow.
Well, speaking of the attorney, let's talk a little bit about your fees. Juan's question says, are attorney's fees written into the cost of the sale and tagged to one or the other, the buyer or the seller?
It all depends on the transaction. Oftentimes, my fees are paid by the purchaser. Sometimes they're split by the seller and the purchaser, depending on the size of the sale, the amount of complexity. I mean, many of the things that I do specifically, and more specifically on a smaller sale, really involve protecting the purchaser, making sure that the movable objects, whether it's equipment or vehicles, whatever the case may be, is actually owned by the seller, making sure that they're buying something that's owned by the seller who claims they own it.
Movable is a legalese term that means things that you could pick up and carry or roll away, like a car or furniture. And
absolutely, absolutely. So on smaller transactions, oftentimes my fees are paid by the purchaser, and larger transactions are oftentimes shared.
Okay, well, we are quickly running out of time, and we have not even talked about branding. Which let's talk about branding in the last minute or minute and a half that we have left here. It is so important, and yet there's so many people that make big mistakes when it comes to branding.
There's 5 levels of branding, and obviously I don't have enough time to talk about all 5 levels, but 95% of businesses live in brand absence. Brand absence means that most people are not aware of you and your services, and people come to your particular location because it's convenient, but if you were to move that location, they probably wouldn't come to you anymore. So there's brand absence where 95% of people live. Then you go from brand absence to brand awareness, from brand awareness to brand preference, like I prefer a Diet Coke instead of Pepsi, and then brand preference to brand assistance, I refuse to drink anything but Diet Coke, and then brand advocacy where you say, have a Coke. Does that kind of help sum it up? Okay, good.
Yeah. So it's a big part of making a business successful.
It is. And when we have those clients that want to sell their business for $10 million, Shauna, and it's worth maybe $5 million on paper, what we do is we sit down with our clients and we look at every aspect of their business, one of them being branding, and we help that business owner fix what's broken in that particular business, and we help them identify the top 9 mistakes that business owners make so we can make that business worth $10 million.
Okay, well, we are completely out of time. Michelle Seiler-Tucker, the book is called Sell Your Business for More Than It Is Worth, an award-winning book, and Damon, attorney Damon Kirin. Yes, thank you. I had it there on the tip of my tongue, Damon. I did. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you can get more tips on my website, too.
And go to our website. We'll give you a link to get to the website, too.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to come back with us next week when we will take on another hot legal topic and help keep you informed of the law.
Remember, you can get more information about this show and other episodes by visiting us online at johnredmannpoa.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on John Redmann, Power of Attorney.
Thank you.